Be joining us very shortly. Now, just so you're aware, the question was asked in relation to the presentation numbers, a little bit of confusion as to which presentation number we might be up to. Yes, we did have two on Friday evening, and we had two this morning before lunch, and this is the second of two after lunch. But we're keeping the health presentations separate, so we had one last night, one just now. This is now number 3, the third one of the health. So you would have been given a card, or there's Doug's up the back, giving out cards for questions that you might have relating to this coming presentation. Just so you've got it, it's presentation number 3. Rachel, thanks once again for taking us through into heart disease and another big one on the radar in Western world, and we're looking forward to what tips we can pick up to introduce into our lifestyle. Let me pray with you. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you once again that you've created us to be holistic, including not only the intellectual, the physical, the social, the emotional, but the spiritual as well. And Lord, it's unique to hear a medical professional incorporating the importance of the spiritual dimension. We're privileged to hear Rachel this afternoon. Thank you for the message that she brings. Bless her and all of us that are listening. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. All right, so the final one for this afternoon that I'll be covering is going to be how can we keep our hearts healthy? So it's probably the biggest killer in our modern society, heart disease, and it really is all about our lifestyle choices and some of the stresses that we're exposed to. So we're going to have a look at a few things. First of all, the risk factors. Again, these things should be no surprises to you. So we have smoking, we have high cholesterol and other blood fats such as the triglycerides, high blood pressure, being overweight, having high blood sugars or diabetes, having an unhealthy diet, not getting enough exercise, drinking too much alcohol, and a number of psychosocial factors, so stress, mental illness, etc., isolation. All these things are contributing factors. Now let me talk to you about something called the heart brain. It is one of the most amazing things that I've learned about in the field of medicine, is that the heart has its own mini brain. What actually started me on this journey was that I was working in a coronary care unit at one of the leading hospitals in Newcastle, and I kept finding that people who had heart attacks so frequently became depressed afterwards. And you might go, well, that's pretty normal. They've just had a massive heart attack. Of course they'd be depressed. But when I was working in the oncology department, I didn't find that much depression in people who've been diagnosed with cancer. So I thought there's got to be some correlation with this rapid onset of depression that I was seeing, and of course this heart attack. So that started me on my journey of researching into this. But this heart brain is called an intracardiac nervous system. So for many years we have known that emotions, such as love or fear, for example, leads to changes in our heart rate, our blood pressure and breathing, for example, but we always thought this was just due to our nervous system responding in concert with our brain. However, the research in the last 30 years has found that the heart has its own functional little brain. It has the following features. It contains several types of neurons or nerve cells, neurotransmitters, supporting cells and proteins similar to the one that it found up on top here. It operates and processes information independently of our great brain or the rest of the nervous system. It even has its own simple logic and thought. It can send messages to our head brain, including the higher center regions at the front. The head brain understands our heart brain so definitively that it can obey those messages from the heart, influence our perceptions, our mental clarity, our creativity, decision-making, and many other cognitive processes. The greater the coherence in the heart rhythm patterns, the more positive the effects on the brain. So how does it communicate? Well, the heart brain has the most powerful and extensive electromagnetic field of the entire body. its component there is 500 times stronger than the head brain. The heart's electromagnetic field is so strong you can even detect it a couple of meters away from your body. And it's through this means that the heart can communicate with the brain and indeed the rest of the body. It is so powerful they've even discovered that one person's heart can synchronize with another person's brain. So how amazing is this? Although I think we've always known it, we've had all the good literature out there telling us about the special heart, and science just caught up on this one. So on that note, I'm going to give you a couple of Bible verses that might just give it a slightly deeper meaning now that we know this about the heart. The Psalm of David, here we go. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. So if you embark on a journey to clean up the health of your heart, adopt this verse and ask God for a clean heart, which will renew a right spirit within you. And I love this one as well. Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, penned these words, which also have a much deeper meaning now. Above all else, it says in Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of your life. So how important is it that we value and look after the heart? Now you know all of this. So without further ado, let's look at some of these lifestyle factors. First and foremost, quit smoking. Now, before we address anything else, this is one thing I wish I could change about the entire world, and that is to get rid of cigarettes. It is a worldwide scourge. In Australia, more than 20,000 deaths each year are directly attributable to smoking, and 5 million deaths worldwide. Smoking cigarettes is exposing to you to about 70 toxic carcinogens that cause more than 40 types of cancer. Nicotine itself can destabilize the heart rhythm. So if you do have a heart attack and you are a smoker, you're far more likely to die from a fatal heart rhythm complication. The carbon monoxide exposure from smoking cigarettes causes damage to the lining of your arteries, making it easier for blockages to build up, forming the atherosclerosis, or those blockages, that leads to heart attacks and strokes. Now, the benefits of quitting are immense. There is no such thing as too late to give up, and I'll explain why. Almost immediately, you get an improvement in your heart rate and blood pressure. Within 1 day, the levels of poisonous carbon monoxide in the blood drop to normal, preventing further damage to the lining of your arteries. Over the next few months, you will improve the circulation throughout the body and your lung function will increase. Over the next several months, those lungs will continue to heal and that coughing and shortness of breath will really decrease. At 1 year, your risk of heart disease is half that of someone who's still smoking. At 5 years, your risk of a variety of cancers, mouth, esophagus, throat and bladder, is halved, and your risk of stroke then is now that of a non-smoker. At 10 years, your risk of lung cancer is half that of a smoker. At 15 years, your risk of coronary heart disease is that of a non-smoker. So the message is, it's never too late to stop smoking. Now, while most of us would agree that a healthy lifestyle is fantastic at preventing heart disease and many other health problems, but could we actually reverse cardiovascular disease? And the answer is absolutely, and we have strong science to back this one up. For decades now, Dr. Ornish, he's an American cardiologist and researcher, along with his team have been studying the effects of lifestyle changes on heart disease. More recently, he's also looked at cancer and even Alzheimer's. Actually, it's just some fresh information coming out from the Alzheimer's studies is that he's actually reversing Alzheimer's with this very program. So we're seeing changes that we can't see with medications. We can't see with any fanciful things that are out there that telling us that they can improve Alzheimer's, but he has managed to do this. There's some case studies coming out. They've got some really promising results, so I can't wait till he finishes his study and we can include this in these talks. But essentially, he took a group of people who had proven coronary artery disease from actual angiogram evidence. So there was a picture, he could see them. He put them on a very comprehensive lifestyle program. At the same time, he had another group, which we call the control group, that didn't have the intervention. So there was a good comparison. We're going to have a look at what that lifestyle program looked like. So the diet contained loads of those whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and legumes, but they avoided all processed foods and animal products and all forms of free oil. So it was fine to have the oils within the whole product, but he, of course, prevented them from having free oils. There was no caffeine in the diet. There was very limited alcohol, but there was no restriction in the calories whatsoever. He also made sure they had very good emotional and social supports, and they were made to exercise daily with a half-hour walk. So what happened in the study? Well, not surprisingly, the group that had no lifestyle intervention had worsening heart disease with increasing blockages in their hearts. The group that was treated, however, even at 1 year, showed significant improvements already with actual reversal of their blockages starting to show. As they were followed over the years, the untreated group continued to worsen, but the treatment group went from strength to strength. So not only did the blockages continue to improve, they saw a 300% improvement in the blood flow to their hearts. They were reversing their heart disease. So he summarised by saying, eat better, move more, stress less, and stay connected with others. Let's break some of these lifestyle measures down a little bit more. We're going to have a look at this diet. Again, there is no surprises here. The plant-based diet, that whole food plant-based diet, comes out on top as the gold standard for managing heart disease and prevention as well. So let's have a look at some of the specific effects. Now, we know that high blood sugar and diabetes is a major risk factor for heart disease. The Diabetes Prevention Program trial showed that a lacto-ovo-vegetarian, so these are the vegetarians that still eat eggs and dairy, reduced their risk of developing diabetes by 60%. However, if going on a completely plant-based diet with no animal products, this led to an almost 80% drop in the risk of developing diabetes. In fact, this study itself demonstrated that lifestyle modifications were almost twice as effective as leading diabetic medication. So it was a very powerful trial. What about blood pressure? Well, we know the research has shown that the more plant-based your diet is, the greater the drop in your blood pressure. Vegans, on average, plant-based eaters, have lower blood pressures than lacto-ovo-vegetarians, and meat eaters have the highest rates of elevated blood pressure and use of blood pressure medications. Even in the first 2 weeks of being on a whole food plant-based diet, there is a significant drop in your blood pressure. It happens quite quickly. Then we've got cholesterol, the leading risk factor here for cardiovascular disease. And it definitely does make a big difference with this. Again, it was in the China study that Colin Campbell who had a look at some of these factors. He compared the diet of those in rural China with those in the United States. The Americans had twice the fat, 10 times the meat consumption, and only 1/3 of the fibre when compared to that of the average Chinese diet in the rural parts of China. The cholesterol readings were almost 40% higher in the US compared to China. But what really made a big difference was those numbers from deaths due to coronary artery disease. US men were more than 16 times and US women more than 5 times more likely to die from this disease. In many non-Western civilizations where the diets are predominantly plant-based and low in fat, coronary artery disease is almost non-existent. So on average, a lacto-ovo-vegetarian will have half the cholesterol level and almost 20% lower than a meat eater, but a vegan will have about 40% lower, so it's a lot more there. And we know that the whole food plant-based diet is usually rich in fibre. High fibre has been shown to reduce cholesterol as effectively as statin medications, which we use to treat cholesterol. Another interesting factor related to cholesterol: even if you remove all the fat from an animal product, whether it be meat or dairy, animal proteins alone will increase your cholesterol. So that's another incentive to remove the animal products from your diet. And of course, the final incentive there is that a whole food, plant-based diet will cause you to be much more healthier weight. Again, this will reduce your risk of heart disease. Let's look at some specifics here. There are particular foods that will provide some extra cardiovascular benefits. Now, the allium family, which is all of your onions and garlics and leeks, for example, have been really shown to help. They've been shown to prevent atherosclerosis, or the buildup of those fats in your blood vessels. They will reduce the blood fat levels overall. They will help to lower your blood pressure and also help to thin the blood to keep it moving more freely. What about nuts? Nuts are not the bad guys here. They are brilliant things to help with a lot of health factors, but they're fantastic at helping to lower blood fats and your cholesterol overall. Now, almonds, macadamia nuts, Brazil nuts, they're all the ones that are probably a little bit edge on the others in terms of their benefits. Then we've got the globe artichoke. Now, this has showed some really promising results in reducing the bad LDL cholesterol and also the other bad type of blood fat, the triglycerides. The most potent part, however, is the leaf, not the heart. Then we've got the humble bergamot orange. It's been made a little bit famous by a leading cardiologist in Sydney who's done a fair bit of research on this particular orange. But why is this particularly important? Well, we know that it activates a special switch called the AMP kinase, which helps to break down and regulate blood sugars and fats. It also improves the circulation, the microcirculation, through the inhibition of some certain chemicals. It converts small LDL to large LDL, small HDL to large HDL, which makes them safer within the bloodstream. It protects against fatty liver. We're seeing a lot of this today. Well, bergamot orange is one of the answers to that. We also know that it can block cholesterol absorption in the gut, similar to the phytosterols that we're seeing being used as well. So that's the humble bergamot orange, and I've got a tree who's just produced its first bergamot oranges this year. Don't know what I'm going to do with them yet, but I was excited anyway. All right, baked beans. They're good for the heart, and I'll address the rest of that little rhyme in a moment. But there is some really, really good science to back up the benefits of legumes of all kinds. So which ones are the best? Well, they're all great, but here's your list that kind of come out on top. So you've got black beans, butter beans, cannellini beans, chickpeas, kidney beans, peas, soybeans, red lentils, just name a few. Black beans probably do edge out all the others though, so if you want to get into something that's a nice, healthy legume protein, black beans would be your answer. Now, they're the most nutritious, but they are all great. Now, they're full of protein, fibre, folate, potassium, zinc, iron, and a whole host of antioxidants, some of which we learnt about in the previous talk. But they are naturally low in fat, they have no salt, and they have no cholesterol. So there's no problems in terms of its health benefits. For those of you who are time poor, there's no problem with using the canned version or tin versions of these. You'll get just as much benefit out of them. So you don't have to go through the process of soaking and pressure cooking them if you're time poor. And look, you can add them to so many different dishes. What are the benefits? It's as good as or better than cutting calories for slimming down in the research. It helps to improve the health of your gut. You might question that one, but I'll come back to that one. It helps to lower the blood pressure and regulates the blood sugar levels, both insulin and blood sugar levels. It decreases the levels of all bad fats in the blood, particularly the cholesterol. And not only does it reduce your risk of heart disease, it also reduces your risk of stroke and diabetes and cancer and depression. So, the rest of the rhyme, baked beans are good for your heart. Well, it is a constant concern and legitimate concern that with regard to using more beans and lentils in your diet, it will cause wind. And this is actually due to the fermentation of undigested sugars in the colon, which actually act as a fantastic prebiotic to the colon. It will feed all your good bacteria and improve your colon health. It's just not very socially acceptable. So here are some scientific tips for you. So this is what the research is telling us in terms of reducing the wind. Right, The leading cause of excess wind in our diet is actually dairy. So the first tip is to reduce or remove the dairy from your diet first. Not being able to digest lactose we're not able to digest lactose as well as we get older. So first and foremost, try reducing the dairy, see if that makes a difference. Interestingly, the research also shows that if you have beans in your diet daily, most individuals end up with no symptoms. And the ones that did, by the second or third week, about 70% of those reported a significant decrease in the winds. So the second tip is to have them on a daily basis. Maybe go on a holiday for a few weeks and do it then and come back. The third tip is to stick to lentils, split peas, tofu, or canned beans, as they are less wind producing. And finally, add garlic. This lessens the gas producing effect as well. So there are some tips. You have no excuse to not try adding some more black beans or some other varieties such as lentils or split peas into your diet. Go for it. It will improve so many aspects of your health. Magnesium. It's a mineral that is front and center in cardiovascular health, and it's deeply involved in a number of things that it helps with. Helps to regulate your blood pressure, blood fats, blood sugar and insulin levels, and some really great sources here. You do not need to supplement this one at all. Is all of your leafy greens, your legumes again, and all of your whole grains. Now let's talk about omega-3. They have been found to have multiple benefits in the cardiovascular system. It decreases blood pressure. It lowers the bad fats such as triglycerides. It helps to keep the blood thin and prevent blood clots. It reduces the risk of developing abnormal heart rhythms. And the healthy plant sources are your flax or linseed, walnuts, chia seeds, and soybeans, for example. Let me talk about this one, the fish oil fallacy, before we move on to any other aspect of our diet and other aspects of things that we use for heart disease. We need to talk about fish oil. It became very popular, and I must say the vast majority of my patients still swear by their fish oil tablets. But if you take all the best studies that have been done on fish oil, oily fish in the diet, you collate all that data together, here is the outcome. There is absolutely no protective benefits for heart attacks. None. Certainly doesn't prevent sudden cardiac deaths or stroke. It does not prevent deaths from heart disease or other causes. Overall, the omega-3 are good to include in your diet, but not from fish oil, okay? There's too many other aspects to fish oil and fish that make it not healthy, but it will not improve your mortality overall, as certainly won't benefit your heart. So if you're taking fish oil, change over to linseed or flaxseed, or chia seeds, or soybeans, for example. Now, as part of a plan to prevent or restore your heart health, consider the no alcohol and no caffeine advice, and there are a number of benefits to this. Caffeine. Caffeine does have some negative effects on the cardiovascular system. Made worse, the more you have of it. It can raise your blood pressure and cause palpitation and extra heartbeats. It makes the blood vessels constrict in the body, heart and the brain, and it can also make the blood vessels stiffer. It is linked to higher levels of cholesterol, and it increases your risk of having a heart attack, particularly if you have diabetes. So staying off the caffeine will improve your blood pressure, cholesterol, and heart attack risk. Now, the cardiovascular system is also very much adversely affected by alcohol. Even at the time of drinking, immediately, both your heart rate and blood pressure will increase. In the long term, this can lead to high blood pressure, increased heart rate, and weakening of your heart muscle and irregular rhythms of the heart. Alcohol can also raise your levels of blood fats, particularly the triglycerides. So by taking the alcohol out of your diet, you will have further cardiovascular benefits by reducing your stroke and heart attack risk. Now, many people will say that there are types of antioxidants found particularly in red wine that provide some benefits. By the way, that has been completely discarded now. That research was all false. However, if you want to get the antioxidants from red wine, there is a much better way of getting that, and that is from the red grape itself, or even better, from blueberries. So, in summary, better blood pressure control, better cholesterol levels, and decreased heart attack risk from removing these things from your diet. Always really important in any chronic disease is to manage the stress in your life. Again, just the simple strategies that I always include, and look, I have a whole talk on this, but I've just summarised it for you. Obviously, prayer and meditation on God's word to help calm the mind. Take time out when you need to recover from the stresses of life. Think positive, develop that attitude of gratitude, share your load with someone you can trust, foster that spirit of forgiveness, have a healthy diet, which we've just spoken about, get regular physical activity, which we will talk about, and make sure you establish that regular sleep routine, and that social connectedness is so important. Exercise. One of the key factors in preventing, treating, and reversing heart disease. Globally, particularly in the Western cultures, there is an increasing trend towards eating more energy-dense foods and reducing the physical activities, and this is leading to serious health consequences. So let's have a look at some of those benefits. It will improve your blood fats. It will reduce your blood pressure. It will improve your blood sugars. It will improve the blood flow through your heart muscle. It helps to prevent blood clots and abnormal heart rhythms. And overall, exercise alone without any other changes, will reduce your risk of heart disease by 30%. In a meta-analysis, which is a large study that looked at nearly 340,000 subjects, it found that exercise is as good as medication in preventing coronary artery disease and prediabetes. So exercise alone, major factor in this lifestyle program. Here are some tips for you. Half an hour a day, 6 days a week. 3 to 5 hours seems to be the best window of exercise per week. And if you exercise moderately, more than 150 minutes per week, research tells us that you will decrease your risk of heart attack by 55%. Try to include about 2/3 of that as good cardio, that's the huff and puff type exercise, like a brisk walk, but about 1/3 of that as resistance type exercise. So that's the muscle building stuff that we need to do as well. We don't need large weights, just small weights. Resistance bands, rebounders and things like that are all fantastic. Now, it's probably one of the hardest lifestyle measures to maintain, so here's some things you can do. Do it with a family member or with a friend or in a small group. This is really good for obviously the social aspect, makes it more enjoyable, but it also makes you more accountable. It's so much harder to say no to exercise when you've got someone who's saying, let's go. All right, choose more than one type of exercise. I find this particularly helps with weight loss, as well as the boredom factor that can occur. And set yourself realistic goals. If you are really unfit, then start with low impact and gentle exercises and gradually increase this. Did you know that there are herbs that we can use for heart health? Absolutely. Let's go through some of these. The hawthorn berry, front and centre, has a very long tradition for use as a heart tonic in herbal medicine, but it has some properties that give it those benefits, and that's why we've been using it for so long. We know it enhances the blood flow through the coronary blood vessels. It improves the contraction of the heart muscle. It protects the heart muscle from damage. It helps with abnormal heart rhythms. It lowers the blood pressure, and it reduces cholesterol. Now, it can interact with some other medications, obviously, if you are taking these things for your blood pressure, for example, or medications you're using for your heart rhythms. So if you're taking this one, use it with caution. Always, consult your cardiologist or your GP when you're using this one. And there is your dose. It's 1 to 3 grams of the berry per day. Hibiscus or rosella tea. It's made of the little dry colour seeds of the flower. It's a great herb to use in heart health, and it's been shown to be as effective as some of the blood pressure medications that we use. As a bonus, it's great for weight loss too. And the dose of that one is 1 to 3 grams of the dried flower calyx per day. Per day. Then we've got good old-fashioned ginkgo biloba. This herb has a lot of circulatory benefits. We know that it does help to improve the blood flow in the heart blood vessels, potentially also in other blood vessels. We do know its benefits on the brain circulation as well. And it's one of the few examples that you don't use the whole herb. There are toxins in the whole herb, so they actually take an extract out of it to get the benefits from that without the adverse reaction. So one of the very few herbs that you use an extract version. And in terms of dosing, you just follow the guidance on the packaging of the product that you purchase. And then there's olive leaf. Olive leaf has shown that it possibly can lower blood pressure. I've seen it work in a few people with sort of very mild blood pressure issues, not so much who those have much more dramatic ones. It reduces blood fats, and a simple dosing there again is the 1 to 3 grams of the dried leaf daily. Here's the final healthy heart prescription for you. All right, always include God in your healthcare plan, and like David, ask God to create a clean heart and renew a right spirit within you. Adopt the whole food, plant-based diet, which provides the best dietary means to not only prevent, but also reverse your heart disease. Make sure you include plenty of the garlic, the beans, legumes, the leafy greens, and a handful of nuts such as your walnuts, Brazil nuts, and macadamia nuts on a daily basis. Make sure you avoid the harmful effects of caffeine and alcohol, and smoking as well. Manage your stress, always important. Get some regular exercise, half an hour a day. And you might like to try some of those herbs such as the hibiscus and hawthorn berry. Thank you very much. Now, you can stick around. I have a whole bunch of questions to get through from last night. So if those of you who don't have any questions or don't wish to stay around, you're free to go. For those of you who do stick around, I'll just give you a 5-minute break and then we'll launch into the questions that we received last night.